nice. It's going to be a smaller group. We'll have the opportunity to actually talk, which will be cool. I hope this will be very, very interactive, so please just, I mean, you can shout stuff out, or you can raise your hand, or you can just drop stuff to get my attention. Whatever you want to do is fine. But what I want to talk about tonight is what was written on the flyer and what I had put up there too for continuity. And that's, what should you consider when you're thinking about making a recording project? I'll tell you a little bit about my background, but in short, I see a whole heck of a lot of recording projects getting done on an annual basis, sometimes on a daily basis, 3, 4, 5 unique recording sessions happening. And I don't get as much insight as I would like, but there's a lot of things that I observe about people's motives for engaging in a recording project, and I have a lot of questions for them. Sometimes I get to ask them, sometimes they disappear before I get to ask them, but I think there's some things, a lot of scenarios where you should stop and pause and say, okay, but really, why am I doing this? And the reason is not necessarily because you should or shouldn't, but because an effective inventory of what you're trying to accomplish and why you're trying to accomplish it that's the secret. It's being intentional about it that's going to make it successful, as opposed to applying some sort of blanketed theory or logic that, well, I should because I'm a musician. Well, anyway, that concludes our talk for the evening. Just joking. So let me give you a little background on myself and on the organization that I run. Again, my name is McArthur. I am a music production engineering alum from the college. I graduated in 2009. I didn't leave. I stayed here, which makes me unique. How many of you raise your hand are planning to go elsewhere when you graduate? Da-da-da-da-da. How many people are planning to stay here? And how many people just don't know? Oh, you're my favorite. There's time to persuade you still. No, it's that's obviously something that happens a lot in this community. Not just Berklee, it's a college town. So we've got 250,000 students in and out every year, and it creates a great deal of transience. And I really just personally connect with this place. I grew up in Tucson, Arizona, so before I came here, I had no idea what, culture was. Anybody from Arizona out there? Anybody? Awesome. I'm the only one. No, it's just where you go to retire. Just not really kidding. Our assistant studio manager at the record company actually is from Arizona, and I didn't realize it until a while after he had been hired, and it's just so strange when you run into somebody like that. So I came here thinking that I wanted to be a rock star. Raise your hand if you would like to be an international pop sensation. Yes.
Wow.
Well, you're already doing all right. You showed up late, so you got that part going for you. Just kidding. What's your name?
Jake.
Jake. I'm mad. I'm sorry. It's hopefully you can dish it too. You don't have to just take it. So I came here thinking I wanted to be a rock star. I did my education here really, really quickly. I did like 7 straight semesters and was done. So it was 2 years, I think, total. On the one hand, cool. On the other hand, I could have gotten a lot more out of it if I'd stayed longer. But when I was done, I didn't want to leave. There's something about this place that I personally like a lot. And so for those of you who are leaving because you personally feel called to or connected to somewhere else, that's the most valid reason of all. But anyway, I noticed because of that transience, because of a lot of people leaving here, and just a number of other things that are not ideal when it comes to arts and culture here in Boston, that even though I love the city for what it could offer me socially and culturally in other areas, in the arts and in music in particular, it's kind of a mixed bag. It's not great. It's going to be a lot better. And so I wanted to approach solutions to that problem. Initially, it was a very, very simple idea. Let me see what notes I made for myself here so that I don't get way too off track. So came to Berklee, wanted to stay here, wanted to try and find a way to solve some of these issues. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that in the context of describing the record company and what it is. But that transition from wanting to be a rock star to fronting bands and playing shows and writing music with other people and writing music alone and trying to figure out or learning sort of what I'm good at, what am I built for, it took a very, very long time. And as it turns out, I'm not well equipped to be a rock star at all. Save how difficult statistically it is to achieve that. Just not for me. It's not something that the more I learned from other people and the more I found out about what that job actually is of being on the road, 300 days a year and all the things that go along with it, the more I realized that is what I wanted. And the only reason I'm telling you this is because I assume how many of you are like in the first half of your education? How many are in the second half? Okay, so more people towards the beginning than towards the end. I hope this is a question you're asking yourself, which is sort of what is my unique value? Where do I, what is the combination of the skills that I already have and the types of jobs and industries that I might want to work in? And how do I marry those in a way that's going to contribute to my success and my happiness and the lifestyle that I want to have? And it gets very convoluted and complicated really quickly, but hopefully you guys are asking yourself that. What I discovered about myself was that I have a capacity to interface with musicians, but also to interface with, I guess, your more sort of type A, corporate-y kind of person. I can sort of hang, I don't regularly find myself in a room with both of those populations of people, but I can kind of hang with both of them. And the more I figured that out, the more I realized that connecting musicians with the resources of the sort of for-profit, corporate, sort of highly organized part of the world, connecting musicians with those resources was something that I was perhaps uniquely suited to do. So, the concept for the record company came out of this idea that, I was an MP&E, so all any of us were talking about all the time was gear and pushing buttons. Isn't that right? That's what you did in your free time the other night. You just pushed buttons. That's what we do. And where we were going to work after school, what studio were we going to use when we didn't have access to, the MP&E studios. What will we do when we don't have a Neve to make recordings on? Don't tell me I'm going to have to use a $20,000 console instead of a $400,000 one. I wish I could draw thumbs down right now, but I'm not a good visual artist. They should make a button where I can just do emojis over the top. That would be really good. File that away. So, trying to figure out what is it that we're going to do when we don't have access to the resources of college. And there was a lot of other people like me who realized that, to some degree, that they needed to continue practicing, sort of honing their craft, and working on building their business as a freelance engineer or producer or even an artist or a session musician, whatever it was they were trying to do. A studio was an important part of that. But the truth was, none of us really needed to own one. We just needed access to one. And that seems to be confused a lot. I heard a lot of my peers at the time, and now I hear a lot of folks who are kind of in the same place in their education or in their career saying, I'm gonna graduate and I'm gonna start a studio, yeah! Woo! Terrible idea, don't do it. It's not what you think it is. And I sort of go back to that idea about being 16 years old and being the best musician at all of our high schools, which we probably were. And then we got here and we were like, oh my God, everybody's so good. I can't even walk through the practice rooms. It makes me want to go home. Maybe that was just my experience. I don't know. But anyway, there is. It's not what, just like being a rock star isn't what we all think it is until you have it, and then you're like, oh, well, I don't know. And I'm not saying I did, but I'm saying I spoke with enough people that had been close enough to that career trajectory that it was like, oh, God, no. And I'm not charismatic enough. So anyway, Same thing with a studio. You imagine it to be one thing, and in reality, it's a completely different thing. You are facilitating the art of others. It's a service-oriented profession. And I think if we went and grabbed a bunch of MP&E students, raise your hand if you're an MP&E student. Awesome, not very many of you. No, it's cool, because I spend a lot of time around MP&E kids at the studio, and I really like to meet other folks. It's not what they think it is. You know, you get into the college and you audition on an instrument, and that's sort of the way you interface with this whole community is as a performer. That's the initial interaction that you have. And then you declare a major like music production engineering, and what you don't realize is you're actually declaring a service-oriented major. Now it's not your job to serve your own artistry, but it's your job to serve another person's artistry. And that is, that's what running a studio is, essentially. And so a lot of folks that want to start studios or be involved in those kinds of businesses are not necessarily being honest with themselves about what the job is. And they don't necessarily have enough experience to understand that they're not really going to feel fulfilled by that work if what they want is to make their own art. You can have more than one thing, obviously, but anyway, going back to this idea of an accurate self-inventory, you have to discover these things about yourself and understand them in order to make decisions that will lead to your happiness. So the seed of the idea for TRC was, it's not about ownership, it's about access. How can we create a resource that nobody has to own, but as many people as possible have access to? So we built a studio, which again was just a terrible idea, but it happened to work out. We started in the basement of a youth center in Cambridge, actually. We traded them programming for space. So we said, we will teach the kids that are already coming to this center about how to use GarageBand and whatever else they want to learn in exchange for you giving us free rent. And when the kids aren't here, we'll use the space for other things, which to this day I still believe was an effective negotiation. It filled up with water a few months later. The whole place flooded and we had to move out. It was pretty horrendous. But if that hadn't happened, it could have worked. So anyway, we're now, how many of you guys have been to the record company? Quite a few of you. I just did something awful. Hopefully this still works. Yes. So one more time, how many people have been to the record company? Cool. So we have a facility about a mile down the street, mile and a half down the street. It's 5,000 square feet. There's 2 studios in it, one smaller room for vocal and overdub recording, and a larger one that's suitable for most things. They did like a 50-piece choir in there the other day. It was insane. I lost my connection. I knew that was going to happen. And then, please just work. Please. It's not going to work. Okay, back to the old school way of doing things.
Do you need a power cable?
No, it's not a power thing. It's connecting to Keynote thing. But I'll just use my computer. That's fine. So we, after opening that facility, we're almost nearly at capacity from day one. We were providing just tons and tons of sessions. It's like the floodgates were open. At a very affordable price. The way we offer studio time is very traditional. It's like a very old school kind of LA, New York approach where you don't provide a recording engineer, so everybody brings their own engineers and producers. And that's an important part of our sort of mission as an organization, is to make sure that those freelance opportunities exist in the community and that artists have the opportunity to hire and vet their own professionals, which is an important thing for artists to understand how to do. Because there isn't really anybody to do it for them anymore, which is liberating and kind of terrible also. But anyway, we shortly thereafter opened the second studio that I told you about, the smaller one, and today we're hosting, it's been about four years of operation, we host about 700 recording sessions a year in 2 studios, so it's 2 or 3 a day, every day, and that's about 2,500 musicians a year. We have a hard time tabulating it because there's a lot of them, but it's pretty nuts. What we realized over time was that this change that we wanted to see in the community, providing access to a studio was one piece of it, but the sort of emergent property of all of it was this understanding that that creating a more vibrant music community here in Boston was something that was really, we were all really personally connected to, and it was really sort of the spirit of the initial idea was how do we create a place where there are the services that people need, but also a place to congregate for us all to get together and say, we're all in Boston and we're making records, and here's a place that we can all commune together. And we realized that a studio was not even close to enough. The problems that keep music in Boston from being more, the scene, I guess, from being more vibrant and more congealed are much, much deeper than just the impact or the segment that recording studios occupy. The reasons are like really heavy stuff like transportation and cost of real estate and liquor licensing and really deeply seated things. And so again, out of this 3 or so years of operation before we started this larger conversation, there was this emergent vision to, as we say now, build a sustainable, nationally recognized music scene in Boston, which is a very ambitious mission for a 3-employee organization. But darn it, we're going to do it. So the sort of next few years for us involve opening live performance spaces. I was telling Elise, we have a grant out right now to convert a bus that we own into a mobile performance venue so that we can pull up and deploy the stage and then have people perform and then close it up and drive away. Fret not, it will have some amazing horn that you can press. I think we'll have the money left over to do that, hopefully. But it's a lot more, and it involves advocacy work too. So now, 4 years later, I sit on some city boards and some other councils and initiatives to make sure that we're part of the political conversation about the arts and music in Boston as well. To get things like the late night tea service so that the train runs late enough for you to take it home from a show. To try and get the regulations around issuing liquor licenses loosened so that it doesn't cost $400,000 to purchase a liquor license in the city of Boston. Yeah, it's like mind-blowing to think about, but you say to yourself, hey, I want to open a restaurant and I want to, just like a little tiny place, like a little hole in the wall, and I want to be able to make a cocktail for the guests that come to my restaurant. Okay, $400,000, please. It's nuts, it's crazy. So, we thought we were, if we build it, they will come, and they did, and then we were like, oh wow, this isn't nearly enough. We have a lot more work to do. And that's the path that we're on now. So part of that work includes talks like this. The more informed and connected we all are, the easier it will be for us to congeal this scene that's happening here. And over time, this community will become more and more attracted to musicians. So when I ask you that question and you say, or I say how many people are leaving or staying here, a great deal more of you when we're successful. A great deal more of you will raise your hands to say that you're staying here. So that's what I do. I would love to answer all kinds of questions about that in a little bit. There's going to be plenty of time for that. And again, the purpose of this is I'd like to share some things specifically around recording projects, some things to think about when it comes to your motive and the outcome that you think you're going to achieve. These are things that you have to really focus on. So this is something you've hopefully heard a million times, but we'll do it quickly. Who has any opinions about or thoughts about the career trajectory for people in the musical arts? It's like really, really concise and easy to understand, right? Like you go to school and then you get a job and then that's it. Ta-da! It's really, really, really challenging. So what I tell people is, just be a doctor. I laughed out loud when I typed that. Becoming a doctor is, and you may have heard this before, the way I think about it is it's sustained and sequential. So it takes a long time. It's a sustained effort. You have to do a lot of things. But it's sequential. When you start, there's some kind of sequence. You sort of know the order in which things are going to happen. And at the end of that sequence, there's more or less a predictable outcome So I want to be a doctor. I'm going to go to my undergrad. I'm going to get into medical school, hopefully. I'm going to find some insane way to pay for it and probably indebt myself remarkably. And then at the end of all that training and residency and all the other things I have to do, ta-da, I'm a doctor. Obviously not the case in music. What I'd love to hear from a couple of you guys, like how you're imagining your career trajectory right now. And it's not to make fun of you, it's because we have to continue, we have to imagine it every day and sort of shift as we go. So anyway, what do you think? How's it going to go from today?
I look at being a musician as being an independent contractor. So, and the reason why I chose this path versus being a doctor is so I don't have A to Z with my life. Like, I know if I go to this school and I become this one thing and I do this until the day I die, I'm set. I like to have adventure and to think that as an entrepreneur and an independent contractor, I have the liberty to pick up jobs and run with them.
So you're choosing a non-linear path because it's what appeals to you personally.
Right, and you can
Hell
still
yeah.
make a lot of money like that.
Hell yeah, that's awesome. Eyes wide open. Who else? How do you think your career is going to go from today? You. Because you
Me?
said hello to me out in the hall, so you're going to put on the spot.
Okay. Well, I'm
What
on
do
the
you wanna
same
do?
page. I also am not trying to live in a straight line. I'm excited about. This is my last semester, so I should be able to answer this question, but I can't. So.
I couldn't either.
I just want to. I keep doing what makes me happy, and it's brought me this far. And I just feel like if I keep following that, something good will happen. I don't know.
And so in
But
your
I'm
mind, what's-
expecting like a lot of twists and turns, and I'm really pumped for that.
So if you're choosing, constantly making the decision to do something that makes you the most happy, which I believe in, I think that's excellent, what in your mind are the trade-offs?
Stability, money, but I'm hoping that'll just fall into place. But I mean, as I'm also expecting to. I don't want to plan too far in advance because I think everything's changing so fast right now. And I feel like I'm just going to pay attention to that and grab onto I'm hoping to have a career that doesn't exist yet, is what I'm hoping.
Okay, cool.
But I don't know.
Cool. Jamie, what do you want to do with your life?
In the way that I look at it is I kind of like what you said about doing what you know you can do. In fact, like one of the things that I know I can do is work with musicians and report musicians and help musicians progress. So I guess as far as a career trajectory, I'm expecting to get hired by the record co and like move my way up as high.
Yeah, there's a lot of jobs available at TRC, let me tell you. I'm hiring nobody for a while.
So that's my trajectory.
Sorry.
Nowhere for a while.
You can come push buttons anytime you want. Very cool. Well, I had absolutely no idea, where this was all going to lead. It felt like it was something important to do, and over time, a combination of that determination that you guys are talking about to just continue following, what it was that I felt called to on a daily basis, but also simultaneously working on some of the practical elements that are required. So I think you have to balance those two things. Nothing really is ever going to completely fall into place, but things have to stay on their own. But things have to stay fluid enough. So anyway, the way I would describe I had some cool graphics. Come back. Oh no, they're coming now. Sustained but not sequential is the sort of artist's career, which means it ends up looking like all kinds of fun stuff like that. Or this one's my favorite. You're like, I don't know. This one's like after a night out. So it takes a great degree, like when you talk to people who are in medical school and they ask you questions about, or people who are doing those types of careers, a lawyer or somebody that's of that more sequential sort of career. Do they ever, do you guys get asked questions by people like that? Maybe
Yeah.
people in your family right? And they're like, what the hell? Like, what are you doing? How's it gonna? I was with a friend of mine who I was in class with here yesterday, and he's going, I still, 8 years after Berklee, having made that decision and gone through all of it, 8 years later, I still end up at family gatherings where people are like, okay, but seriously, what are you doing? It's like, I've obviously made a commitment to do this, and I've been surviving for 8 years. Can you just leave me alone about it already? So yeah, I'm sure there are people in all of our lives who will never quite give up the ghost. Anyhow, you have to have that endurance, I guess. What's the buzzword for that right now? 10 extra points for whoever can get it. The word for getting through it.
Longevity?
Longevity, yeah.
Tenacity.
Tenacity.
Mojo.
Exactly, mojo. The word I'm thinking of is
Is it better one syllable?
grit.
Oh.
Have you heard people use this word? It's very much it's like a sort of corporate-y buzzword to assess, mostly in the entrepreneurial and venture capital sort of worlds. They're when they're assessing the CEO or the founder of a company, they're but does he or she have grit? Because we're not giving the company our money unless they have grit. So grit, I really do like the word actually. Grit in psychology is a positive non-cognitive trait based on an individual's passion for a particular long-term goal or end state, coupled with a powerful motivation to achieve their respective objective. Woo! Almost there. This perseverance, see, we have grit just getting through this. Perseverance and effort promotes the overcoming of obstacles or challenges that lie within a gritty individual, the gritty individual's path to accomplishment, and serves as a driving force in achievement realization. All those venture capitalists with their money are off talking about it, in their world. What they don't realize is this room is full of the grittiest individuals of all. We're the people who are we have no idea how it's going to go, but we're just going to get up every day and do it anyway. It's it's nuts. It's absolutely crazy. So I want to give you a couple examples of people that some case studies, the people that I went to school with, and a couple people who I didn't, because one of them is Prince. He's in the didn't go to school with him category, in case you're wondering. And for the sake of anonymity, we're going to call them all Alex. So, Alex number 1 was a drummer initially, made his way into work, in addition to being a drummer, worked as a drum tech for a long time, and ended up teching on a lot of really higher profile, initially not, but ultimately higher profile recording sessions, and actually developed chops as a recording engineer by observing on all the sessions that he was on. So initially, he would be there on the first 2 or 3 days of tracking, sometimes for the entire project, depending on the budget, getting $200 or $300 a day, usually, just to be the drum tech on the session. So between takes, if we were going to change a snare, if we were going to swap out a head, whatever we were going to do, it was his job to do that, and to keep the drums, from an acoustic perspective, sounding as good as possible, and to collaborate with the recording engineer on that stuff. He spent so much time sitting there watching these sessions happen that he developed an interest in and a skill set in audio engineering, and now he actually has a studio in his home. I recall him saying it's all analog, which is very, very cool, but not super schmancy. It doesn't look super impressive or anything like that. But he is in a place now because he made really intelligent financial decisions. And $200 to $300 a day as a drum tech is not a lot of money. Obviously, it's not terrible. Probably sounds pretty good. Sounds good to me. At least probably sounds pretty good to you guys. But with a wife and a kid or two, it's not going to really do it. But anyway, he made really intelligent financial decisions and saved a bunch of money over time. And now I think he said his monthly nut is 1 or 2 sessions. If he can do, if he can work 2 or 3 days a month, his expenses are paid. If he wants to do anything else, he's got to work more days than that. But very middle class, normal life, doing that work every day. And it took, I think this whole process, that whole transition took 15 years, maybe. So, not crazy, but also not, you could be a doctor in less time than that. Alex number 2. He was a bassist when we were at Berklee together, and his actual name is Alex. He was the one from whom I took the inspiration for the name. He was a bassist when we were at Berklee. He played in a bunch of bands, ended up as a front of house engineer, through, I don't know, a studio internship he was doing or something, ended up doing front of house on Warped Tour for like one smaller band. So he wasn't like working for bands Warped Tour, he was like working for one band on the bill, and so he followed that band around. He did that for a little bit, landed as an assistant engineer at some guy's like personal studio in Long Island. Successful recording engineer, but like very DIY place. Like they built the place themselves. It's all very scrappy and gritty and whatever. And now was offered a job that I didn't think existed anymore. This is a perfect example of that thing just sort of materializing where you're like, whoa, how did that happen? Somebody was like, hey, move to Memphis and we'll pay you $50,000 a year to be the house engineer at this beautiful studio. He was like, okay. He called me and was asking, like, should I take this job? And I'm like, that's a unicorn. That job doesn't exist. How did that happen? Alex number 3 he's my favorite. He was a drummer and did some production work and then became a barista and then worked as a box office attendant and is now finally making his way back to engineer and producer. But, and he kind of does all those things simultaneously, right? When you ask him about this, what he says is, I just have not given up on doing, like you said, what it is that I love to do. So I work these peripheral other jobs to support that. And same thing, what is it, 5, 6, 7 years later, there's all these opportunities that keep coming up for him that he wasn't expecting because he's just stuck it out. And and slowly but surely developed a reputation. So now it's like, hey, do you want to come? Do you want to move to Rhode Island and run this studio in Rhode Island? And he's considering that opportunity. There's a couple other things he's considering right now. So it's interesting how that happens. And how many of you guys know, this is like a little off the beaten path, but how many of you know the whole how Prince got his start thing? Yeah? No? A little bit? Simply put, he was in a community, and I look to Minneapolis as a sort of example when I'm talking about the record company's mission a lot, because that was the city when Prince was just getting his start that hadn't really been catalyzed as a music city yet. It was like there was a lot of talent, but it wasn't congealing, not unlike what's happening here. And so he created a bunch of bands secretly to compete with his band, and he wrote for all of them, but nobody knew. So there was like 3 or 4 other bands that he was writing for and basically managing and leading secretly so that it would look like there was a groundswell of really good music happening in Minneapolis. In reality, it was all him. And it didn't work out for him at all.
So it was Prince versus Prince?
It was Prince versus Prince. And it's a really important, maybe those days when you feel like I just can't get a gig, it's so crazy, like there's so much competition in Boston. It's just something to remember. That competition is really, really important. It has like made and broken, many a career. So I want to do a little game of then and now, and this is getting closer and closer to the specifics of you making your record. Then and now. I really wish I still had my phone. It's so sad. It was like so cool, and then it just exploded. So then and now, record labels. What did they used to do, and what do they do now? Anybody? All right, I'll just type it. It's easier that way, and then we'll get to the fun stuff. So back in the day, they would invest in something, and they would expect a return later. And it wasn't the things that they were investing in, and the artists and the bands they were investing in, were not necessarily ready for prime time, and they knew that. So they would give them a lot of runway. They'd say, you got 4 or 5 records before you have to produce a return for us. Now, obviously, they just want you to be profitable out of the gate. So if what happens is you build a business for yourself, and then they come along and they're like, hey, let's partner up. And you're like, why? I already did it. Which is, again, obviously people make a lot of different decisions, hopefully the right ones for them, but many times I think independent artists that are making a reasonable sort of middle-class living doing that on their own would elect to not work with a label. Recording projects are similar, and they are a function of what's happened with the labels. A recording project initially was something, the development portion of it was something that your label was funding, And then it was something that you were going to take, very similar to the process of manufacturing. You were going to make a product and you were going to sell it. And that's working really well today, obviously. Not. So that whole dynamic has changed so much that it forces us, it's really important that we think about that concept in the context of deciding to whether or not to make a recording, because it just doesn't have the same function in the marketplace anymore. So recording studios follow even further down that line. The change in labels have produced a significant change in the meaning of a recording project. The change in meaning of a recording project has significantly impacted the studio world. As you guys know, every other week somebody's closing their doors or selling their equipment or whatever. There's two main factors that have affected the studios. One is the fact that budgets are much, much lower. There just isn't enough revenue to support spending a lot of money on creating a recording. There's not a whole lot of ROI on that. And then the other thing, obviously, is how easy it is to make a recording with really affordable technology. So you definitely do not need a recording studio any longer. Initially, the argument was a technical one. Studios needed to exist because you weren't going to have a tape machine and a $300,000 console in your house. Now that we all have that, I mean, this thing probably wouldn't be good at making a record right now because it can't even do that. But we can make recordings a lot of different ways. So raise your hand if you worked in a studio other than at the college for a recording project. Cool. Raise your hand if you've never worked on a recording project. Sorry, raise your hand if you've not used a studio other than the colleges for a recording project. I'm really bad at forming these questions, I'm sorry. I'll get better at it someday. So raise your hand if you made a record at home. There we go. That's what I wanted to ask. A lot of you, all of us, yeah, me too. Yeah, and it works. Was it successful? Anybody have any good stories? Not successful?
Oh, kind of.
What was the problem with it?
It was just like like you were saying, it was kind of a very low budget and kind of like a portable, like, you know, like those little like Zoom recording studio things.
Okay.
Like you record like right onto a disc.
So it didn't sound the way you wanted it to at the end of it?
I guess,
Yeah. Anybody have a really good experience?
Well, for me, when I invested $7,000 into my little home studio, I started taking Berklee online classes for mixing and mastering.
Mm-hmm.
So then I got a master's certification in music production with Berklee Online.
Mm-hmm.
I was able to get clients in and clients out, as well as working some of my own stuff too.
So,
But like I got an education with the investment versus
Yeah.
just investing and figuring it out, I guess.
Yeah.
So it helped. You know.
cool. Yeah, Alex number one was a total autodidact in audio engineering. So there are so many different ways to approach getting that knowledge. It took him probably 3 times as long or 4 times as long to understand the things you might have understood faster, or that with those of us who are at FPE might have understood through that. What's up? I'm Matt, by the way.
Hello.
What's your name?
It's Nick.
Nick, hi.
Hi there. I think I had a project. I think something like 2014 or something. But I think the main reason that it worked so well was because recording-wise, I had low enough expectations because I knew that I was purposefully using as little tech as I could to make some of the strangest sounds that I could. But it got to the point where just composition-wise, and because it was on a recording, that I could use it for the end of my high school thesis, and I showed it to a friend the other day, and he's like, "Dude, there are thousands of rock guitarists. Do this instead."
Yeah, so you created something unique out of the technical constraint that you had. Yeah.
Very much that, out of guerrilla techniques, which is why I'm interested in this, because of how a sort of stationary record studio can still sort of be so important, because it's the kind of thing that I know if I was going to record something like more rock related, then I'd go over to an actual studio. But then why is that? It's tricky, I guess. That was just a weird ramble. You don't have to take any of it into consideration.
No, it's good to hear. And I want you guys to hear each other's perspectives too, because you don't all want to do the same things I've done. So it's important to share this information. How many of you have heard the expression materials to vision versus vision to materials? Is that something you're all Nobody?
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Okay. So lots of times when we're embarking on a recording project or any project, you can generalize your approach to the project as being either one where you go from the materials to the vision or from the vision to the materials. The vision to materials approach requires a lot more money typically because you're coming up with some amazing, best possible scenario. This is this crazy thing we're going to build, and we're going to build it in the most comfortable and efficient way we possibly can. And that's going to be really expensive. So when we go and take that vision and try and collect all the materials that we're going to need to accomplish that, we're going to have to spend a lot of money on it. That, back in the heyday when they were putting $1 million into making a single album, you could really do that. You could just come up with some crazy thing and you had a budget to achieve that vision. Obviously, that's not the way most of us are working. Really, nobody is working that way anymore. So we, most times, are going to go from the materials to the vision, which is what Nick, right? That's what Nick was describing, this idea that I have these two things, what can I make with them? This is all I've got, so we're going to have to make something up. You can use that same kind of thinking in terms of approaching your career as well, because most of us, we're going to have to approach our careers from the materials to the vision. This is what I have, allow me to create some kind of vision for my career trajectory out of the materials that I actually have. So, something to think about. So why should you make a recording? And seriously, why? Why are you doing it? Give me and who's making a recording right now? Anybody? Jamie, why are you doing it?
I'm in a band and...
Don't give us the whole story, just one or two words.
Yeah, no, we're just trying to get our music, a better representation of our music out to people that listen to it.
Okay. All right.
That's something to sell at gigs.
Something to sell at gigs. Nick.
Hopefully it'll sound good.
Okay, something that sounds good.
To entertain.
To entertain? Okay, so making a record for entertainment.
I did a lot of work with the band, and we just wanted to have something to show for it.
Okay, so just to document, create an artifact of where the band was at. Cool.
Because I really believe in what we have to say.
Okay, so you...
It's his band.
I am working with it, yeah.
Okay.
I can laugh at him.
He apparently doesn't.
Yeah, I was there was a part of me that wanted to laugh the way he was laughing, but then there was another part of me that was laughing because he was laughing, so there was a lot going on there. It was complex. So some of the reasons that I came up with ahead of this thing was money, which is a joke, really, because that's not going to happen. Nope, seriously, don't even, that one, I couldn't figure out how to make the thing, put a line through it, so I just left it, but it's a joke. One of my other favorites is for the fans.
That's another joke.
Which is a real gem, yeah. If anyone says that to you, that's what you guys are laughing at, was for the fans?
Yes.
We're laughing at
All
all.
right, that makes more sense.
We're just laughing. We're laughing at all
Okay.
of this. It's not funny though.
For fun, so we're going from the ridiculous. We're going from the ridiculous to the ones that I think are acceptable. For fun is where acceptable starts, because you enjoy doing it. That's a great reason to do anything. What about for marketing purposes? That was a few different answers fall into that category. I need something to show, a documentation of what we do, so that I can market the fact that we are musicians. And then the one that I feel most passionately about is recording as a means of artistic development. This is the thing to think about, and I will explain why. That old school model where you had a lot of runway, where your label gave you a budget to make 3 or 4 records before they expected a return. They knew it was going to take you 3 or 4 complete projects before you had honed and clarified or purified the thing that was you as an artist into something that they could actually effectively market and sell. They knew it was going to take a while, the same way that it takes 8 or 9 versions of a piece of software that you're writing to make something that's bug-free and really useful. There are so many revisions that are necessary. I'm definitely not talking about Pro Tools, by the way. They're still going on that one. Magic ID does not exist. Has anybody got that one? 4 a.m. it pops up in your face. It's like an error message with no number. Magic ID does not exist. You're just like, what? I need to go to bed. This is crazy. So Anyway, hope you don't mind, I'm having fun. This artistic development angle or component that a label used to administrate for you, they would effectively force you to do this. It was a part of your deal. You have to do this for yourself now, which sounds like a cliche because we're at a music college and I know a million people are saying this to you all the time. But you have to do this in the context of your recording projects, which I think is the more specific part of it that may or may not be, you confronting you every day. When you go into the studio and record, you are essentially getting a focused environment to try things. If you're working the way that I think is the most effective way to work, where you're not just going in with every little detail of what you're going to accomplish sorted out. You give the project some breathing room to kind of discover something about itself. Really think about whether the reason you're embarking on a recording project is because it's going to make you money, it's a marketing tool that you really, really need. If you actually have a whole pile of fans that are waiting for it, like, you probably don't. I'm not trying to be a jerk, but you probably don't. There's not, I talk to people all the time who are like, this thing has to be out on June 14th. That's the day it's coming out. And I'm like, why? For who? Who's waiting for it? Who on June 13th is like, oh my God, it's coming out tomorrow? Like, that's not happening. It will someday, but if you're in the early stages of your career, that's not your situation. This is another fun slide. Recording. There's some things you should know about it. It's expensive. It's really expensive. If you're going to do it in a way that supports artist development, you're going to need more time than you think you need. And therefore, it's going to be even more expensive than you already imagined. At the record company, we try really hard to make it affordable, but it doesn't change the fact it's still expensive. You can very easily spend just like $5,000, poof, gone on a recording project. And it's not done.
Yeah.
You're like, where did the $5,000 go? Maybe it trickled out $300 at a time, so you're not fully aware. It doesn't hurt the way it would hurt to write a $5,000 check, but you spent a lot of money. This is the part that we really have to think about, people. It's really self-indulgent. It really is, and it's different if we go back to that other slide and we go, for the fans. If you're in a position in your career where you really do have a large fan base that you need to provide content for, that when you have t-shirts printed up, they're already there waiting to buy them. That changes a bit. It's not quite so self-indulgent because there's actually a group of customers that you have to create a product for. But in the early days of your career, the process of making a record is really more for you than it is for anyone else, whether you're admitting it to yourself or not. I promise you, deep down in there somewhere, you realize there's a huge part of it that's just because you want to do it, which is great. That's a perfect, like I said, great reason to do something, but acknowledge it. Find that part of yourself and go, okay, this is the 40% of me that just really wants to do it. There's 20% of me that thinks it's a good business decision. There's 40% of me that just can't make up its mind about anything. What am I going to have for breakfast? I don't know. The other thing, and this is really important as well, point 2 and point 3 are the most important ones. It's way too easy to do it. It's like the easiest thing that you need to do. It's the easiest part of your trajectory to becoming let's be realistic, a working class musician. It's the easiest part. You go into a room by yourself with a small handful of other people who you've selected, whom you've interviewed and chosen. This whole thing is of your design, and then you sit around and you create whatever it is that you think you should create. That is self-indulgent and easy. And holy crap, it's so much fun. It's like the most rewarding experience of your life. Like, it's the greatest thing that you might ever do. Oh my God. But it's still really self-indulgent and really easy. You have to think about that because Because if you don't acknowledge what you're actually doing, you're not going to be successful at it. You know, and this has been true forever. This isn't just because the music industry is in a tailspin and we can't sell plastic anymore. Blah. This has always been true. Recording projects have always been really self-indulgent and really easy. I'm not saying it's easy to make something that people want to listen to. That's the hardest thing in the world. But going into the studio and having a recording project, that's really simple. And so I find myself, I don't know if you guys can identify with this, I find myself all the time sitting at my desk or wherever it is I think I should be in order to be productive and going, okay, here's these 3 things that I need to do on my desk. I'm going to do the easiest one first. Like, I know that one's going to take me 15, 20, 30 minutes, maybe 45 if I really stretch it out. And I know exactly how to do it. I know all the things it's going to take. I can guess how much it's going to cost. You know, whatever. I'm going to fill out this form, and I'm going to fold it up, and I'm going to put a stamp on it, and put it in the mail. Done. And then I get to like the second or third thing on my list, and I'm like, oh crap, I wish I'd done these first. Because now I'm faced with the more difficult components of it. And when it comes to making your way into the world of, you know, being a recording artist or whatever permutation of that you want to do, the recording part of it is the easiest part. The marketing yourself, the developing yourself as an artist, the developing not only the ability to, but a reputation for putting on a good live show, all of these things are much more nebulous. And they're so much more different. That wasn't right. There's so much, music school, I don't know. They're so much different from one another. So one person's journey through those more difficult tasks is very substantially different than another person's, compared to a recording process, which certainly has a lot of variety, but it kind of follows one thread. It's a thing, again, that's easy to understand and relatively easy to do. So if you decide that a recording project is too expensive and too self-indulgent and too easy and you're not ready for it, or you're going to wait, what will I sell at shows? Ah! So the answer is tickets! Try that on for size. Go out and sell some tickets. You can also sell t-shirts with your face on them. Or brownies. I don't know. You figure it out. That's what I wrote.
Really good idea.
Yeah, people would buy brownies at your show. I swear they would. But the answer, the point I'm trying to make is that those people at your show don't want to walk out with your CD as much as you think they do. They really don't. Like, all I've been doing recently is buying t-shirts because I figured out somehow it's like late onset coolness, I guess. I figured out it's really cool to have shirts from the bands that you like to go see. I didn't figure this out until like 2 months ago. I was like, oh, this is great. People are like, what's that? I'm like, it's this awesome band that I love. Yeah. Like, oh, you like this band? Okay, yeah, they're good. They're really good. See, look at that. And guess what? That doesn't happen when someone buys your CD. Like, at all. I'm out walking around with your band on my shirt, you know, which I won't do for Abercrombie because, but it's too, sorry, that's a whole different presentation. I won't do that for any other brand, but I'll do it for you, you know. Bye guys, see you later. Thank you. Have fun. Go get some beers. Unless you're not old enough to do that, then don't. So things to think about with your live show. You might actually make some money, for starters. This is a classic TT's photo, by the way. Rest in peace. A moment of silence for TT's.
Is the one on the left a picture of Asia?
Oh, I just.
Oh,
shots fired.
That is bad.
They say like the Middle East is gonna buy TTs.
The Middle East owns TT's. Yeah. The Middle East is going to reopen TT's as a club called Sonia's without a liquor license. So it'll be all ages all the time. So this is the first point is always stupid, and then the ones after are important. The feedback is instantaneous in a live setting. It's very different than your recording project, for which, if you're lucky, you will spend months and months and months making something, and then there will be people to provide feedback months later after it's already done. You cannot go back and revise it. Compare that to a live show where you have the opportunity to get instant feedback. You get up and you start playing a song and it's not a good song, you're going to know, unless you're just so in your own version of the world that you don't notice that people aren't enjoying themselves. They were all dancing and having a great time for the last band, and now you're on and everybody's back at the bar. Like, not good. So it gives you an opportunity, unlike recording, which is a different type of honing your craft and developing yourself as an artist, this gives you a really instantaneous way to do it. And then back to the grit, the corporate team building exercises are always point 3, if you haven't noticed. One-to-one business development. This is your bread and butter. As much as you want to believe you're going to be able to put something on the internet and millions of people are going to see it, which might happen for a few of us, the actual measurable, sustainable way to create your business as a recording artist is one-on-one. And it expands outward from there. The larger your fan base gets, the more it's sort of like likes on Facebook. The more you get, and the more it starts to grow itself. But it takes a long time. And so, one example, do you guys know Jess, Betty Who? Yeah. Yeah. Her whole strength is all 100 people in the club, she talks to after the show. That was how she built what it is that she has. In a genuine and authentic way. So you would go to a show and you would actually feel like she was happy that you were there. And maybe she's just a great con artist, I don't know, but it doesn't matter because it felt real to me. I really thought she was happy.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes, please.
So what do you do if your music, because this seems to speak more to bands that are, whose live show thing is more about that upbeat, get people dancing and then, but what about if you're someone that plays music that's more, that goes more in the direction of the introspective kind of thing? It's a different.
I mean, it's just a different type of audience and a different type of venue. You probably want to start, if that's the kind of music you're making, you're going to want to start by playing house shows. And intimate, maybe a gallery space or something that lends itself more to that attitude that you're talking about, as opposed to let's all jump around and turn it up really loud. It wouldn't, if you were performing that kind of music in a sort of black box rock club, with monitors that had tape on them that said no spitting, that probably, probably not your scene. Ralph's Rock Diner, anybody in Worcester? Anybody ever played it? The monitors literally say no spitting on them. It's really awesome. The sound guy won't let you do a sound check because he's worked there for 25 years. He's like, no, dude, I've seen everything. You don't have to sound check. It's going to be fine. I've literally seen everything. It's okay, whatever. So one way that I like to think about live shows versus recording is research versus manufacturing. And this is the more traditional way. So thinking back to the way records and live shows were administrated, back when it was more profitable than it is now, it really was sort of the research department and the manufacturing department. And your live shows were like research. It was possible to make money doing that. But they were where you collected information about your fans. It was where you learned who your audiences were, and you figured out who you could market to actually show up, and who bought a t-shirt, and you learned about your audience through the act of performing live. That information that you gathered, typically first, linearly, or in order. You did the research part of it. Then you use that information to create a manufacturing business by creating recordings and then, or a product of any kind, and then selling it to this audience that you've been researching. That's pretty different nowadays than, now that the internet and the music business and everything is the way that it is. That's changed pretty considerably. The manufacturing part of the business doesn't really have any customers anymore. And so thinking about any other manufacturing business, what happens when you don't have any customers?
You fire everyone, and everyone dies.
Aggressive. All right. You stop manufacturing, right? Period. And so the live music in today's world is sort of the new manufacturing. It's like, how can we take this experience and turn it into a series of products that we can sell people? You know, it's ticket type A, ticket type B, ticket type VIP, you know, a bunch of sort of a plethora of different ways of selling tickets, all kinds of products that probably didn't exist before. The, you know, sort of manufacturing element of selling other companies' products, which is, it's always been, endorsement deals have always been a part of the music business, but it's much more important now than it was, you know, to the sort of overarching, the financial picture for an individual artist back in the day. It's much more important now. I'm sure most of you know, but one statistic I use all the time is Beyonce actually generates more money through her cosmetic endorsements than she does through the musical side of her business, at least with the sale of recorded music. That may be different because of the whole like moving 1 million units on iTunes thing that she did last year, this year, earlier this year, last year, doesn't matter. Point is that might be different now, but as recently as a year ago, she was making more money from those cosmetic endorsements than she was from the sale of her music. So, this is sort of the way that I look at, let me get both of these going on. This is sort of the way that I look at the two main components of your business that you're starting. On the one hand, you're going to have to continue developing yourself as an artist constantly. Always be doing that sort of the research part of it, let's say. Always developing new material or you know, refining your image or your marketing presence or whatever it is. There's always going to be some kind of refinement. And then there's going to be pushing whatever it is that you've refined out to the masses, however you're going to do that. And to your point about, you know, different types of artists, the way that you run this aspect of your business is going to be very different than the way a rock band manages this aspect of their business. However, this is probably going to be pretty similar. You're going to be playing different things and developing different things, but the sort of methodology and the amount of time that it takes and how you organize it and all of that is not going to be that different compared to this, which is going to be like night and day different for different types of artists. This comes back to another kind of like the, what's the word? Materials and vision thing, another sort of parallel that I enjoy a lot, which is preparation meeting opportunity. You guys must have heard that one, right? Anybody? Success is when preparation meets opportunity. So this is the preparation part. This is where the opportunity comes out of. And looking at these two things we've been discussing, recording versus your live performances, these days, not traditionally, because I realized the slide before this one said almost exactly the opposite thing, but these days, I view recording as more of an artistic development activity and live shows as more of a marketing and manufacturing activity. And figuring out in your business how you want to manage these elements is going to be really, really important. You know, it's going to be different for everybody, but now, wow, I just talked really fast through all of that. Why don't we do some Q&A, and then we'll go from there. We need, So, questions about the record company, stories about what you're doing in your career that you think fits into this stuff. Talk to me.
What role would you do with DJ, please?
A DJ?
Yeah.
What kind of DJ? Like a DJ that's an artist or a DJ that's like a contractor for an event?
Like music DJ, what someone who's an awesome artist as well.
I mean, a DJ in that context, give me an example of someone I would know.
Mine lyrics.
Okay. In that context, you're just talking about an artist. It's just a different product. You know, it would be different if we were talking about like the general business sort of DJ, you know, that would be doing gigs at events and things like that. But if they're creating original music, it's just a recording artist. Just a new and extremely profitable breed of recording artist.
Yeah, so I've been working with a band for, I don't know, a while, maybe a year or so. And we've been developing like a lot of music. And there was a point where we had like a set of songs that we wanted to record, but then like we all, over the summer, you know, like, we're in different parts of the world, and but we were still writing, and then we came back and we found that we like these new songs so much, but we don't know, like, should we record these old songs and still use them for whatever, or do we just like kind of say goodbye to those and go with the new stuff?
What, does someone want to help him? Because I have an answer, but I'd love to hear somebody else's perspective. Does anybody have an opinion?
I would say, I mean, still track the old stuff, but like, or at least have a documentation of it to where y'all know the arrangement, y'all know, so whenever, maybe a couple years later, you know, y'all kind of run dry, and then you kind of resort to your old stuff that nobody's heard, and kind of revamp it, make it something new, because really, you know, an artist writes a song, their first song and their last song, it's still the same song, you know, because it's like, you know, it's your career. So it's your sound still. So.
That's cool. What do you think?
I know I've been in the band with him for several years now.
I'm
and
so sorry.
It'll never be enough.
Gotcha.
But, you know, we've made a lot of, or he's the main writer. There's been a lot of music that's sort of passed through the band, and we've kept some of it. We've passed some of it on into non-existence. But I've sort of been trying to document as much of what's been happening over time, to sort of keep a record of where we've been and sort of try to figure out where we're going, what we could return to if we needed to, things like that. Because you never know when something, I think as Jordan was saying, from your past, will still resonate with you.
On top of that, choosing the songs that you like the most now will seem the most relevant to you, so you'll seem the most passionate about them when you record them, so they'll come out as the best. And then the older ones are the kind of thing where maybe several months after, if you record the ones you don't like now and you just do them because you think you have to, maybe a week or so after you finish, and you start liking the song again, you'll go, wait a minute, what if we did this? Oh wait, we already did it.
Do it when it's hot.
Yeah.
Cool.
My instinct about I first of all love both of those answers. My instinct when you said that was do not record and release that material. I think documentation is absolutely important, and you should have a record of this thing you wrote, even if it never becomes anything. I forget things all the time, like when I sit down and write something and then like just don't document it and come back the next day and forget it. I'm like, it would have been so easy for me just to like put my iPhone out there and record it, but I was like, no, this is so good, I'll totally remember it. Famous last words. But it makes me think of, I guess I'm just full of like annoying expressions and catchphrases tonight, but it makes me think of this thing I say a lot, which is, and I learned it from a mentor, craft is what we have when art fails us, which is most of the time. And so taking those songs that you may not feel so personally passionate about anymore and documenting them somehow so that you have them is, to your point, is a way of you making sure that you have this backlog of craft to go back to when you're in a dry spell artistically, when you feel like we're stuck, we need something to so that we can continue working until that inspiration like strikes us. And I think it's really important to keep that material. I think it is not helpful in such a competitive and crowded market of music making to put out something that isn't authentically who you think the band is or who you feel like you are at that moment. And so even if you get to the end of a recording project, and this goes back to this concept of viewing recording as artist development, you could get to the end of the record, as it happens with a lot of people, when it's done and you're like about to send it off to be manufactured or uploaded or whatever you're going to do with it, and go, I hate this. You know, over the course of making this, over the last 6 months or a year or whatever, I wrote all this new stuff. This thing we just finished isn't me anymore. So what? dump it. You know, it's awful, but if you, and, you know, it could seem wasteful if you are viewing it as something that you need to, you know, develop some immediate return on. If you're looking at it as an investment that you're going to achieve something financially from, yeah, that could be pretty wasteful and hard to stomach. That you just spent $5, $6, $7 grand, whatever it was, on making an album. You know, even $500, whatever you spent, you're now just going to throw out because you don't like it anymore. If you approach the project from an artist development perspective, did I break
I
it?
don't know if that's, I don't know why that happened.
If you're approaching the project from the beginning as a means of developing yourself as an artist, then you can disconnect yourself from this idea of releasing it and producing some kind of return and it having some specific practical use in your career. And that's going to allow you to make really, really intelligent decisions. I love what's happening right now. It's so much fun. I want to make it like really awkward for you guys, but bananas. All right. Yeah, I think that internal dialogue and focusing on this idea that the recording project is to learn something about ourselves, and it may or may not be something that has a place in, again, the practical elements of our career. I think for a lot of people that's a very healthy way to work. And back when the getting was good and there was a lot of money to be invested and you had a financial partner, that happened all the time. You went in and you cut a 35-song record so that you could throw out 2/3 of it. That was just how you worked, you know. And now we get so fixated on this. Well, I've written 5 songs, so it's time for me to make an EP. It's like, no, don't do it. It's a terrible idea. Just record them on your iPhone and then make a playlist and just like while you're walking down the street, listen to them and figure out, you know, I love doing that because I watch people passing by me and I'm like, would that person want to listen to this? Would that person want to listen to this? And usually I get back from my walk and I'm like, nobody that I saw would want to listen to any of this. You know, think about the time and money I saved myself. Anyway, that was, and I got some exercise. Come on. You had a question.
Me?
Yeah.
Okay, well, it's kind of,
Yeah, you.
This is really hilarious timing because
Good.
in like last year, most of the spring of last year, I was really ambitious. I had just like.
And you're not anymore.
No. You'll see where it's going. I was really ambitious, and I was like, okay, like I'm a go-getter kind of person anyways, and so I was just like, I got this thing, I want to make an album, and like everyone's telling me I should, and again, I want to have something to sell like gigs, which is what I said before, and I've like got this unique. I play the oud, and I actually did the whole album after I heard company.
Oh, cool. Was it a good experience?
It was a great experience. Also,
Good.
because I had an engineer that knew all the quirks of.
Who was it?
Pablo.
Pablo?
Yeah.
Who knew all the quirks of what?
Of just like the live room and everything. I mean, there's so much little quirk. You had to restart the console and fun stuff like
Wow, that sounds cool.
Yeah. You know nothing about that. But no, anyways, it was a really good experience. But yeah, it was very ambitious, and it was that exact mentality. Like it was 6, not 5. 6 compositions that are like groundbreaking, which I still think they are, because like not a lot of people are doing stuff with the oud right now. So I stand by that. But yeah, I just have to make an album so the people can hear it. And I have now like 500 albums sitting in my house, and I sell like 2 a day, which is I live without regrets, and I'm really happy about it. And it was very like when you said self-indulgent and easy, that was 100% true, because it was all for myself, and it made me feel like I was like this. Like I was something, like
I'm in the studio today.
Yeah. Yeah. I took pictures of it, and all of you will too. And like I have really like disc makers, and I went the whole 9 yards, and I'm really happy with what I have and everything. I mean, I see now that it was very ambitious, and like I refuse to call it an EP. It was an album.
That was an album.
Yeah.
What's the longest song? How long is it?
7 minutes.
Yep, that's an album.
Yeah. Because my pianist took a really long solo. Yeah.
Oh, God.
So.
I hate it when that happens.
Oh, I know.
It's like, that's enough.
Yeah.
That's enough.
So, anyways,
Okay.
I guess the point of the question is, I'm really happy with it, and it still completely represents me musically. But at the same time, I'm about to graduate, and I mean, I'm only 21. I still have so much more developing of my music that I want to do. Like,
So how
Pardon
do
me?
you think you'll approach your next recording project?
Well, that's kind of the question, because first of all, from the artistic angle, I don't even know what it's going. I know it's gonna have the oud, and I know that it's gonna have Arabic inspired elements, which is my whole thing. But I mean, now I'm wondering, could I make it more upbeat and maybe include some electronic elements and have it speak to like that side of me and also that side of listeners these days? Should I have it go more in the traditional vein, because I'm really, really obsessed with the traditional Arabic music? So there's so many questions I'm asking myself, and I don't know if that's just me or if it's normal for an artist to just feel like there's so many different ways you could go with your music, and each one of them would define you in a different way. And I feel like when you make a recording project, you're really committing to one of them,
But for how long? You guys know the whole trend of fast fashion. Have you heard of this?
Yeah.
And it's something that's, I don't know enough about it, but I know enough to relate it to this concept. It's something that's changed a lot, where fashion used to work on a 4-season basis, basically. Now it works on like a 12-season basis, where
Right.
every month is a new season.
Right,
There's
right.
new things that have to come out. And that mentality has had a lot of amazing effects on the revenue side of fashion, and a lot of terrible effects on the manufacturing side. And it's a complex issue. The point is, the life cycle for musical projects is so different than it used to be. It's not, I agree with you when you say that you are stamping, you are putting some kind of stake in the ground and saying, this is who I am today. But how long do you have to wait before you put another stake in the ground? It used to be, under the traditional system, that you had a business partner, your label, that had a very specific idea about how long it was going to be. And you didn't really have any choice.
And what it even was.
And what it was. Yeah, they had all kinds of ideas and thoughts that they imposed upon you. They're not all blood-sucking evil people at all. They probably were musicians and wanted to be rock stars once, and then they just deviated. But which, don't be confused, is not what happens when you listen to too much Devo. That's a different thing altogether. Side note, Berklee once gave me free tickets to a Devo concert. It was like my favorite thing the college has ever done for me. It's like so good. No, I don't think you have to be as concerned about that anymore because of how quickly people move on. There's just a really, really fast cycle, which is part of the trend to release singles, in popular music, and instead of making albums, to put out a series of singles, is following that same sort of ideology, where it's like, okay, this is who I am today, and then 6 weeks from now I'm gonna put out. And what's going on in the electronic hip hop sort of world, where it's like, I'm just gonna drop a new mixtape tomorrow, and then a week from now I'm gonna put out another 5 songs. I mean, a lot of those artists are doing really, really well, and putting out something new like every 5 seconds. It's fine, it works. I think one thing I heard in your discussion about which direction to take your music, I think one of my biggest pieces of advice would be, don't get lost in the middle of those two ideologies. You will be forever invisible if that happens. If you're either going to do the most artistic, however niche it may be, the most artistic, like highest art that you can possibly make, that is so deeply connected to who you are as a person, and that thing. Again, you are operating in a space that is about as niche as it comes. It's going to be tough for you to find customers.
Oh, yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
But presumably that will also be very satisfying for you creatively and artistically. On the other side, there is creating music that is designed, basically manufacturing music that is designed for mass consumption. And that is an art in and of itself. That is something that people spend their entire careers trying to figure out how to do. And it's not about what satisfies them creatively or artistically. It's about, I don't want to say chasing a trend, because that sounds easier than it actually is. But that's a whole different discipline. Mm-hmm. And my recommendation to you would be, choose. Don't get lost in the middle of trying to combine elements that you think will be more commercially appealing. Either do the thing that you want to do artistically, or drive a hard line for commercial success. I think it's very difficult to marry those two things without and to come off authentically. not a hard and fast rule by any means. I don't have a specific story to tell you about the person whose career was forever ruined by making a decision in the middle. But my sense is you want to make a really
Commit to one.
commit. Yeah, commit.
So you're saying you can either go pop or you go not pop at all?
I think people stumble on things in the middle, but I don't think they consciously make a decision to be in the middle. I think you can be creating music that speaks to you personally that happens to be 18 months ahead of whatever the pop music market is doing, and you kind of accidentally catch that wave. That definitely happens to folks. Those artists tend to be ones, in my experience, they tend to be ones whose build up or lead into that moment was much slower, and they were doing something unlike the pop artists who are children of industry. Basically, they're just performing whatever the hottest writers are writing at that moment. That band that happened to be on the pop wave for a moment accidentally is probably going to be off the pop wave pretty quick. They're going to hop on for 1.5 records or something, and they're probably going to continue. If they don't get totally corrupted by pop music, they're probably going to continue doing what they were doing before that wave overtook them, and so they'll go back to being more obscure afterwards.
It won't niche it and then it's stale.
That could be an example, yeah. That could be. Could see that. But I think, again, the reason that band will be happier than another band, or prouder of the career they've had or whatever, is because they committed to something. They said, this is what we're going to do. And for a moment, it happened to be really lucrative, and that was great. Hopefully they made intelligent financial decisions during that period, and pigeonholed some money away. Not pigeonholed, squirreled. Different animal. Pigeonholed, that's a completely different thing. Cool. What else? Stories, jokes.
Can I ask
Please.
another question because you brought something up? Can you talk a little bit, since everyone's talking these days about how we're in such a visual age, and
I hate video.
releasing
hate
singles in the form of, for example, a YouTube video, even if it's just a picture the whole time. Statistics show, that'll get you so much more attention, or will grab people's thing. Or if you embed a video in YouTube that has this is a good trick I read on ASCAP Insider. If you embed a video on Facebook, but it has the subtitles in the same language in English, but just subtitles so that it grabs the person who's scrolling their newsfeed's eye, then it makes them want to watch video. We're so visual these days.
Yep.
And what do you think? Where does releasing a single or releasing a music video single combo package, or releasing a single with a picture attached to it, where does that come in?
So just to be clear, we are now very much, the last question as well, we're very much entering the territory of opinion. So
Yeah, of course.
this is just what I think about it. Again, I don't have any very specific stories to share with you about things that I've done or how I know it's played out for other people. I think that one of the mistakes that people make when thinking about how to market themselves online is not acknowledging that all of those rules and suggestions and things they read online are based on the idea that you've already negotiated the transaction of finding someone who's interested in the content that you have, right? Because if you have a video that catches someone's eye, but that person turns out to not be actually genuinely interested in that content, it's over.
Yeah.
Transaction ended. And so those types of things are effective, but only if you've, say, built a social media audience that is actually interested in what you're doing, which is not a given by any means. People end up, companies and bands and everybody ends up all the time with a huge constituency on social media that actually isn't that deeply connected to what they're doing. They ended up liking the page because there was some viral video that they thought was funny, and in reality they don't connect with any of the other content that outlet is making. And so you have this huge sort of irrelevant audience that's following you, that's following you, but in reality they're not really paying attention to anything that you're doing. So it goes back to this one-to-one sort of idea. I think what is sustainable are building real, meaningful relationships with a smaller number of people, step by step. And the way that I do this every day in my job is in the context of nonprofit fundraising. I didn't talk a whole lot about it at the beginning, but the record company is a nonprofit organization. Our mission is, our mission is to build a sustainable, nationally recognized music scene in Boston. And we are established as a social, cultural, nonprofit organization. So we don't exist to make money, we exist to achieve that outcome, which is true for, any nonprofit, hopefully. They have that mission and that's why they exist, is to solve that problem. And so when I'm cultivating donors for the organization, I have to go out and raise money to offset the cost of studio time, because it costs us more to provide it than what we charge musicians to use it. There is nothing that I can do on the internet that is more effective or more efficient or more profitable than a relationship that I build in person, period. I can reach 100 people on the internet if I really try. I can reach 100 people and I can get them all to give $100, maybe. And that's $10,000, right? I'm terrible at math. I can spend 3 hours with one person instead of however many hours and aggravation and whatever it took me to get 100 people online to give me $100. I can go out for a meal and spend 3 hours talking with somebody else and get them to write a $10,000 check right then, like at that moment. And the difference is not only the impact of the gift, or the size of the gift, I should say, but I have a personal relationship with that person, and I can tell them real things. I don't have to tell them the kinds of things I have to tell people on the internet to get them to pay attention to me. I can call them up and be like, hey, listen, not going so great this month. We really need your support. Or, hey, guess what? We did this incredible thing. You should feel so good about supporting our organization. And that's a relationship that I can nurture over time because they actually know what we're doing and they actually know me and they, and it's a real thing. So anyway, particularly in a genre that is as niche as the one that you're talking about working in, I would really focus on where are your people? Where are they? Who is it? What's the profile? Like when I sit down, and it sucks. It's like really kind of slimy and sounds terrible when I say it out loud, but I sit down and I say, the profile is hobby musicians with disposable income. Who are they? And I go to my board and I say, hey, board of directors, write down on this piece of paper all the people you know who are peripherally interested in music and have money. I'm gonna go have lunch with all of them and ask them all for money. And it's slimy and weird, but it's, again, the only saving grace is that it's open and honest. Like they know why I'm meeting with them, And it's the same thing. You have to develop that kind of relationship with your fans, and it's time consuming. Everybody knows the whole 10,000 true fans thing, right?
No.
Roughly, if you develop 10,000 true fans, and by that I mean fans will actually buy your record or your shirt or whatever it is when you put it out, they'll actually buy it. And that might mean you have 150,000 likes on Facebook or something like that because, 10,000 fans on Facebook is not 10,000 true fans. Those true fans actually know who you are or actually have taken time out of their day to learn something about you. And they'll buy your record, they like you. That's $100,000 if you make one record a year. It's $100,000 in working capital to run the rest of your business as an artist. And 10,000 sounds like a lot, but it's measurable, it's achievable. You can go out and at a good gig, make 15 new fans. And as you move up in the ranks and open for larger acts and work in larger venues, and as you sort of build up your career that way, that ratio will shift as well. You'll have a show where you make 100 new fans, and 10,000 isn't hard to get at when you're generating 100 new fans per gig, which it seems impossible. 100 fans, you could get 100 new fans at a show. That seems absolutely insane, but it is possible. It's something you have to work up to. How do you find people to listen to your music now?
Well, unfortunately, I'm in a community, I already know a lot of people in the community, but I met those people through going to other events, musical or cultural. So,
Yep.
Arabic culture and everything about it is it's my thing, my passion.
Okay.
And I got to know the amount of people I already know now. Many of them are in New York because I lived in New York before Berklee, through going to film screenings and theater whatevers and demonstrations sometimes and musical concerts, and just like having my face seen in that community, I don't miss an opportunity even now. And I'm interning at a agriculture center, so I'm getting to know lots of families personally. It's
So how many people do similar things or consider activities like going to other shows as being a part of your career as an artist? Everybody? Good. It's a great story. I was talking to the executive director of this organization that does presents classical concerts. Big, $8 or $9 million organization here in Boston. And he worked out a deal at one point with New England Conservatory to provide tickets to their entire season of performances to New England Conservatory students. And the way it was going to work, because it was going to be a part of the coursework, they were going to have to go to these shows in order to get credit, was they gave them a punch card. And every time you went to a show, you had to have it punched, and you had to go to at least 10 shows and get 10 punches, and that was how the thing worked. And keep in mind, this was a deal that made these performances included in the tuition they were already paying. So it wasn't like they were going to have to spend more to go do this. This was given to them as a part of their tuition. Like a week into the program, some New England Conservatory student went online and found the punch, like the exact same punch, and then was charging students to punch their cards when it was apparently pretty lucrative because nobody wanted to go to any of these shows. They all seemed to think that it was beneficial for them or more useful for them to stay on campus and practice or whatever it was they were doing than it was to go out to these shows. It was like both the guy my colleague and the administration at New England Conservatory were like, we have a problem. Where is this mentality coming from that somehow it's not an important part of these people's career and their education to go and see stuff? Yeah, you absolutely have to be out there.
I was gonna say, in a way, that's because it's a do-it-yourself era too. You know, everything you can be seen on YouTube by yourself. You record yourself. You could have your own studio, which you record your own songs, which you only listen to, as we've kind of mentioned before in a way. But I think it's just the whole mentality of everything can be done by yourself. To whereas a recording back in the day, you know, which could be the 60s, 70s, even 80s, you need a whole group of people, and it's like a project that involves so many people with specific skills versus just one person having a little bit of each skill, you know? So I think that goes with people think, oh, I need to be practicing so I can get myself better because I want to be on YouTube and I want to have a million hits versus going out to a show, feeling the synergy of the music and getting to know the other people. So
I agree with you
know,
completely.
so it's just also like the era that we're in too is, you know, everything can be done by yourself. You don't need anybody. But it's not really true. It doesn't really work. It just sounds good.
And that's when we're thinking about the justification for recording studios. You know, we said back in the day, you needed them technically. You know, technologically, you needed a studio to exist so you could go to it and make a record. That's not even close to being true anymore. The argument for recording studios is, in my opinion, primarily psychological. You can do everything you do in a studio at home, mostly. I know you can't play drums at 4 in the morning or whatever, but you can come up with a way to do it, not in a studio. So why would you choose a studio? And I believe that the primary motivation should be psychological because it's a place to work. You leave your home, you go to work, you have a schedule, you have something that you're aiming to accomplish. I mean, it shouldn't be so rigid that you can't, you know, be an artist about it. That's one of the most rewarding parts of the experience is like discovering something during a session. But there is some kind of goal, some end in mind, which is not how you primarily work at home. You know, it's like, it'll be done when it's done. You know, and I should just start all over again. Okay, you know, and you don't really, it's much harder to finish things. Not really a start and an end time for things. It's also tough, like you said, to bring collaborators in. Like, what, are you going to bring a producer into your house, like in your apartment to make a record in your bed? Probably not. You know, in a studio environment, you're apt to think about those things and choose to work with other people. And that, I really like your point. Something I think about a lot is what is the detriment of having one mind on something instead of 50? You know, back in a traditional recording project under the old label system, by the time a recording project was done, a single album, I mean, 50 people or more had touched it and been a part of it and had something to say about it. And that's a much larger sample pool than one person. So things that are made by a large group of humans tend to be more representative of a human experience, a more general human experience than things that you make all by yourself in a bedroom in a vacuum. So.
Yeah, I would say to add to that, like we're kind of further fooled into believing that these are like one person is doing all of this stuff. Like big artists like Katy Perry, for example, we imagine Katy Perry's doing all of this by herself, but that's not true. She has a team.
Taylor Swift is an amazing example too.
Yeah.
They've done such a good job of maintaining the appearance that she still has a one-to-one relationship with her fans. They're quite good at it. Geniuses, perhaps. But you're right, it's not true. And it's the same way, in our personal lives. Think about how we use Facebook. I don't know if any of you else feel like Facebook is a depression machine, but I definitely do, because you go on there and you see a disproportionate representation of reality. You see all the happiest, most joyful, sexiest moments of everyone's lives. And it's like, this is not real life. Everybody here has a normal life just like I do, but on Facebook, oh boy, it's all selfies all the time, perfect lighting, and that's, I think in a musical context, that the fact that artists like Katy Perry and Taylor Swift do that, I think if you aren't really conscious of that, it can make it difficult for you to make progress. You're never going to be able to do it as well as they can do it, because they're, like you said, they're doing it with a team. And you shouldn't aspire to individually. That's a futile effort. What I think you should do is aspire to find whatever your voice is and your method of communicating, the thing that most directly links who you are as a musician or as a business and your outward appearance on social media. However seamless you can make those things so that people are actually they're seeing what they actually get. You know what I mean? Like, you want people to come across your video in a feed or whatever, and the impression that they have of it, whatever split second they see as they're scrolling by, however the most accurate that can be, as far as what they're likely to get from you, the better, because you want that acquisition, that transaction where they see something and they click on it and they go, oh, actually, I like this. You want that acquisition to happen as efficiently, as reliably as possible. And if you have misleading, it's like the whole clickbait thing. If you have misleading content, sure, you're going to get a few people to buy something or whatever, but you're not going to develop something sustainable. You have to come up with a way to show outwardly your unique value on the internet, which is infinitely harder than demonstrating your unique value in person, which is why I would recommend taking that personal approach to start. The thing about taking that personal approach is you build a constituency of actual humans who are also online, who can help you in your online efforts when it's time for you to do that in your career. You can't really do it the other way around, where you build a constituency online and then suddenly you have like an army of people who go into battle with you actually. Maybe on the internet, but Anything else? This is like a totally open forum now, which is the best thing in the world, I think. Anybody?
I was going to mention from earlier, you were asking about like, do I do kind of like more pop tunes, not really pop, but just more sellable tunes, or do my own music, right? What I was thinking about is, what if you just wrote 2 albums, one of them being more pop-sided to where, okay, I know that this is kind of how the structure is and that's what people like to listen to. Maybe it's a 6 to 10 songs, just something that you kind of pump out. And then another album to where it's like, this is me, this is like the weird, odd time signature, whatever you use, polyrhythms or whatever, microtonal stuff. And then, and put them out and just see which ones get, it's kind of like still doing the live show thing. It's like you're just seeing what touches other people and what doesn't. And then you take those, the accumulation of those, and then you go make a full length, to where it's like, you just got something to play with, versus thinking, do I have to be a pop star? Do I have to be an avant-garde, person? It's like, well, technically we're all both. We all like pop music, whether we like to admit it or not. if you hear something and you're humming it in your head, and I'm like, why the hell is this song in my head? I have no idea. You know, it should be death metal and Frank Zappa, what the fuck, you know? But at the same time, you can't escape it. Like, it's there, it's catchy, and it's just like cool, you know? So it's really like, don't run from like one or the other. Like, try to find a way to just, you know, find your own voice in that, you know, kind of thing.
I think, yeah, I think there's something valuable. I mean, because of this, the whole fast fashion, fast music example, because the life cycles are so short, you can get away with stuff like that without damaging yourself too much. This is while you are living the luxurious life of obscurity, of course. And then someday you'll have to make a sophomore record that you know people are actually going to listen to, and at that point you'll be like, oh shit. Like, that's when it gets real scary and complicated. Because you have a group of people who are expecting, you know, who have some kind of expectation. But anyway, while that condition doesn't exist, you can take advantage of it. You know, going back to the example about throwing out the whole record that you made, that might be another thing. Make 2 records and then throw them both away and go make another one.
Go be a doctor.
You know what? Go be a doctor. Yeah. But you know, you make the first record so you can make the second, so you can make the third, so you can make the fourth, and by the time you make the fifth, maybe you're making something that people want to listen to. But you can't put so much pressure on those early records to define who you are. Because no matter how much pressure you do or don't put on it, they're not going to. You know, it's not reality. Yeah, I think the exploring that kind of concept what was your name, Jordan? Jordan. Exploring that concept that you're talking about, Jordan, in a live context is also really important. Play one song and then play something a little more modern and just watch. See what happens. And by modern, I mean whatever I mean. I don't know what I mean. But you interpret that however you want. Play something that's a little more towards the left of what you do, and then go back and play something that's more towards the right of what you do, and watch people. You know, I think the number of times I've come off stage and managed somehow to not form a cohesive memory of what the audience was doing and just felt like a total idiot, where, you know, we're sitting around talking about the show afterwards going, well, how was that show? And it's like, well, it felt great. Okay, cool, but were we doing it for fun, or were we doing it to develop ourselves as a band? And if we were doing it to develop ourselves as a band, then we probably should have been doing something more than just having fun. We probably should have been paying attention to what was going on, you know. Yeah. Yes, sir.
I'm kind of wondering, just this whole process, this whole talk has been exciting, but also a little bit depressing. Does anybody listen to music anymore?
Yes.
At all?
Did you listen to music today?
Yeah, for most of today.
Okay.
Actually, I find it ironic that the fact that we're at music school and we're always jamming and networking or doing homework that we need to listen to, I haven't been listening to much music at all.
Yeah, and that'll change too. It was like 2 years for me before I remembered why I liked music. So just don't worry, you'll get back to it. But yeah, you come here and you've gotten really heady about it, and it's become this really intellectual pursuit.
In general, like, I know so many people who just, I don't know, whose tastes are very, like, this is gonna sound super pretentious, casual.
Whose tastes are casual?
Yeah.
That's not the most pretentious thing that you could have said.
No, but it's definitely not very humble or not pretentious. It's pretentious.
I see what you mean though. Like, there are a lot of people that are more sort of like fair weather listeners and will
I'll
sort of
listen to whatever you feed
hot.
me. Yeah.
Or I'll listen to whatever's hot, but I'm not gonna like take time to like. I mean, not to sound nostalgic for a time I didn't live in, but nobody goes to the record store anymore. I mean, so you.
I did yesterday. Come on.
Go to the record store and like anticipate the release of I feel like these days there isn't like a Steely Dan and a Led Zeppelin and like all these bands that everyone is so into and going and listen to their new release.
So that casual.
So you're right that it's kind of like.
That casual consumer, is that your customer for what you're doing?
He asked the question.
No, I'm just curious. Is that your?
No, I don't.
Absolutely not. Done. Never think about him again. Is that your customer?
I really don't think so.
Done. Moving on.
Yeah.
You know, there's too many people in this world for you to be right about every single one of them. They're not all casual listeners. And there is, like everything in this world, there is a cycle to this. And there is something, going back to this idea of personally interacting with one another, there's something wonderful blossoming out of the ashes of social media and how we've all turned into I don't know where I'm going with this. There is something good that's coming out of this whole social media craze, and that's that interacting with people face to face is novel all of a sudden. It's like, oh wow, this is a novelty. I'm going to go spend time face to face with someone instead of chatting with them. Yeah, instead of chatting with them on Facebook Messenger. And this is something that I would estimate it'll be another 5 years at least before we see any like really noticeable effect. But there's a transition back to spending time with people, and that will have a positive effect on the work that we're all trying to do. But it doesn't change the fact that we all have to come up with a way to leverage that change to our individual advantages, and it's not a one-size-fits-all thing. Like, you're going to have to figure out with the music you're making, okay, how do I appeal to people who might, be so tired of listening to music online or whatever Pandora feeds them? Like, that's a potential customer that I can go acquire. How am I going to acquire that customer? And same thing with you guys. You're doing something presumably completely different musically than she's doing. Yes, and you're going to have to figure out who your customer is and how to acquire them. That casual listener, they're not important to you in the beginning. They're not going to make your career for you. They might down the line, depending on what you achieve, as far as your level of fame or prominence, they might be your audience someday. The whole bell curve thing, have you guys seen this? This is why I need to be able to draw on that thing. Darn it! Oh, it would be so good. So there's this bell curve, and at the left side of the bell curve, I feel like all I have are these like stupid examples and like charts and things. Anyway, on the left side you have children's music. On the right side you have art music, and at the middle of the bell curve you have popular music. And the y-axis is how many people are listening to that type of music. The bell curve is constantly shifting to the right. It's always moving. So what is art music right now becomes popular music tomorrow, and what is popular music today becomes children's music tomorrow. Right? It's totally true. So if you are you cannot focus on that pop audience with the music that you're making today because you're already behind. You have to be out on the right side of the bell curve anyway. You can't focus on that customer. What?
I just can't believe I hadn't thought of that. Yeah.
The first time someone drew that for me, I was like, oh my god, that's it! Ta-da! I gotta make a slide that says that. Also, I forgot, we're in the Q&A portion. No, the bell curve thing is really, really important, and you really do have to free yourself from that trend-chasing mentality of trying to seek out the pop music listener, because they're casual today, and they're always going to be casual. They're probably not going to become an uncasual, super engaged listener. So your only chance of acquiring them is if at some point your music floats by them in the breeze, and they're like, oh wow, that sounds just indie enough. You know what I mean? Did you have a question?
Yeah, I guess, just thinking about like kind of like the insurgence of like the casual listener. I think there's.
I like this term, by the way. I'm using it now.
It's
good. The casual music consumer.
I think from my perspective, I kind of look at it as like the reason because of that is because of like the music industry in general. And I know that sounds like super cliche, but I think it's from like the beginning of like the music industry. I think it's starting to become more and more, not really of the music itself, but it's more. I mean, you look at like normal concerts of like big artists like Katy Perry, like Beyonce. They're not really focused more on like the music itself, but more on like the appearance,
the show,
and stuff like that. And
they're entertainers. Like, they're not musicians. They're entertainers.
Yeah, they're entertainers. And like, you look back on like music history, where did that all start? Like with Elvis Presley, it started technically like with him. Nobody really cared about what he was putting out. They wanted to see him on stage with like the flashy clothes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think it's difficult to define any one particular moment when this happened, and I would caution you against saying that it's like so much different today than it was, because it's kind of always been that, you know? There's always been those artists that are marketed in that way. The way we market them and how it looks and what kind of venues they play in and all these sort of practical things will change. But that idea of taking a musician or any kind of specific performer and making them more of an entertainer and less of a tradesperson, you know, like initially they were doing this one specific thing, and now what we're trying to do is create that spectacle that you're talking about that isn't necessarily related to music. I mean, if we're talking about the rise of the casual listener, I would say the internet is really what's done it. That's what's allowed people to consume almost anything with reckless abandon. It's like, oh, I feel like I need a new shirt. Click, click, it'll be here in a day. You know, like, you don't even have to, everything has become that way, where you just, you know, you make the decisions about a shirt the same way you make decisions about what to listen to. It's like, well, I need a new shirt, and here's this one that just flashed up in front of me that looks pretty good, and I know my credit card's already saved with that particular online vendor, so bing, boom, done. You know, Touch ID, finished. But yeah, it's an interesting thing to think about for sure. I don't think you can really try and stop them or influence them. There's just not enough money in the world to influence to change consumers' minds. And I talk about that in the context of Spotify all the time, where people are like, oh, these streaming services are so terrible. And I'm like, it doesn't matter. The consumer has spoken. It's the best user experience around, period. You will never do anything to change it, because now customers think that they should be able to consume music that way. You'll never be able to convince them to consume music in a less convenient, more expensive way. Not going to do it. So you can blame whoever you want. You can run around in circles, like, and say the sky's falling. But the reality is that's how people want to consume music now. So we're just going to have to figure it out. We're going to have to figure out the economics of it later. I really don't want to cut you off. Did you have a question?
Yeah, but I don't want to use it.
Go, and it'll be the last one.
All right, so
all
I'm a songwriter and a singer, instrumentalist, all that. My direct and study teacher is really, really pressuring me. I'm opening for her in November, which is great. I love playing live, but she's pressuring me so much to get the online presence really solid, have recordings to sell at the shows, have photos, music video. And I am not quite ready to put that big, like, this is who I am as an artist. I kind of just want to, see, every time I write a song, I like it better than all the other ones. I want to keep going with that exploration. Yeah, I feel like there's so much pressure to, be an artist. Why aren't you playing live? Why aren't you doing this? Why don't you have a record? How do you, I don't know, is there any kind of thing you want to say about that?
I think it's just a self-confidence thing, really, and if the thing that you really believe is that you don't know if you want to do those things or how you want to do those things, you're not at that point yet. It's not about knowing exactly what to do. If you know that you're not ready to make a decision about doing those things, then it's just about being confident about that, and communicating that. What do you think this person's motive is? Why do you think they want you to do all of this?
So
they sell more tickets to their show?
No, I don't think I would do that for her. I think she's fine on her own, but I think she likes the idea of having a kind of like a protege. She has all this knowledge, and she wants to be like, you do it, now you be successful with what I've given you. And I'm like, that's so great, I want your knowledge, but I feel like I'm not quite ready to use it as quickly as you want me to.
Yeah.
I want to focus on school. I have homework to do.
Yeah. And I think the thing I say a lot to people is don't get sucked in too much into that either. Homework's very important, but your career and your reputation have begun even though you're in school.
Yeah.
Don't defer starting your career until school's over. So you got to be careful of that. But it sounds like you just need to have a really honest conversation with this woman and say, here's what's going on for me, and I'm not ready to do these things you want me to do. And if that means that you don't want me on the show, I understand. I don't know what the implications of me not wanting to do these things are, but you found, does this person have a really strong mentor that they had, and they really believe this is the way it should happen for people? Or?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't.
We only meet over Skype.
Ask her questions about herself. Be like, how did you come to have all this knowledge? Did you figure it out on your own? Okay, that's what I want to do. Leave me alone. I don't know.
My mom,
it's just a thought. What were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say that maybe in doing some of those things, maybe you're not ready to do every single thing, but maybe doing a few of those and just seeing how it feels, really get you closer to what you want to do. Because if, like, part of trying and failing is learning, and if you're doing those things and then you put something out and you're like, wow, I hate this, like, why did I do this? You'll never do it again. So then you're gonna get closer to your answer that you're looking for. So maybe just try and like dabble in it.
Yeah,
I think it only works if it's your decision.
Yeah.
You know?
totally, yeah.
So I think that might be, if we boil this thing you're talking about down really deeply, I think what it really is you just want to be the one that decides when and how to do these things.
Yeah.
And the truth is, it's not going to happen authentically if that isn't the reason why you do it. So.
That helps a lot, actually.
Speaking from experience, like I was totally in that boat like last year too, before I like committed to like making this project or whatever, and then I got really heady about it and really into it, and I like went in that direction. But all up until then, I was super putting this wall in front of myself. Not to say that you're doing that, but that's what it was for me. It's like I'm not ready. I'm not good enough to actually put myself in the public eye. Like I need to be a master at the oud. I need to like be convincing to the real Arabs that I could like that I'm worth their time, and then I can do it. And then actually, you know, a lot of things in my life changed such that it made me finally like, no, I'm just going to do it now. And what I learned was that it actually made me better at my craft through doing it, because it actually put me in the real, it gave me real deadlines to make my best work, and it gave me real people that were watching me a little bit. And the good news is, yeah, like I have a website now with some cool pictures on it and stuff, but the good, and like, so in some ways, yeah, okay, that put me in the public eye, and I'm not sure who I really am yet to have myself in the public eye, but no one really looks anyways, so it's actually not even a big deal. It's not like suddenly your face is going to be on a billboard, you know, right now, and then it's going to be a commitment. And in fact, it feels great to have, if there's a song that you have that you're really proud of now, even if it's just a couple chords and your lyrics, you're like, but like I'm so proud of this song. It's worth, you know, making a little DIY home video and putting it up, because no one's going to watch it anyways, and it feels good to have done it, so. I don't know.
I was going to say, as far as like the press kit is what you were talking about, picture or online.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in a way, you could outsource some of these things. I mean, you know, maybe you have a friend who's good at photography. Snap some pictures.
Totally.
Let them do that. You know, and then maybe you have a friend who's good with the internet. You know, who could really take care of a Facebook page that you're like, you know what? Then let them do that. So you could focus on the music. You know, like outsource some of these business-related things. You know, maybe there's an A&R student at the school that you could say, hey. You know, if you need an artist to kind of work with, you know, maybe you can help me out. So that way you're not really tasked with a full workload. I mean, yeah, she's giving you the workload, but you just take that and go, well, who's good at this? Here you go. Who's good at that? All right. Next thing you know, you got a team of people, and then you can focus on yourself.
I think that's a good piece of advice. I tend to disagree with what you're saying really early in your career. I think, you know, I've learned this as an executive director that really had no idea how to run a nonprofit organization in the beginning, and I don't want to pat myself on the back, but I consider myself to be relatively adept at this point. And the only way that I learned that is by doing everything myself. And one of the biggest challenges is in those early days is going back to this theme I hope you're hearing come out of my mouth about authenticity. It's really difficult early in your career for another person to seem authentic about it. Like in the beginning, Taylor Swift was actually writing her own tweets, and so was Katy Perry. And then somebody came along after that activity started to snowball and looked at all of the things that they were tweeting and used that person's actual behavior as a model for how to communicate with their social networks later.
Their own tweets.
Oh my God! Oh no! You're fireworks. Anyway, the point is, you have to balance those things. I also think you have to be constantly asking yourself about the motivations of others, because they're not going to do as a volunteer. They're not necessarily going to do the work to the extent or at the level that you need them to do it. And yeah, it's a lot to do it all on your own. It really, really is. But those kinds of, you sort of discover those kinds of people. At least that's been my experience.
Right.
You can't really go out and find them in the early days. Like they sort of self-select into those roles. You have somebody like some fan who's like really passionate that's like, I want to work at your merch table tonight. And you're like, well, I don't really need anyone because no one's buying anything from me. They're like, I want to do it. I really do. You know. And then that person turns out to be like, you know, they don't know anything about managing a band, but you build a relationship with this person over time, and suddenly, you know, they're helping you book gigs and blah, blah, blah. But again, that self-selection, allowing that room to breathe, it's, if you aren't a big corporate operation like a Katy Perry or a Justin Timberlake or whatever. It's really hard to hire people like that. Kind of have to find them, discover them. Thank you guys so much for having me. I hope that it was at the very least entertaining and ideally informative. And I'm available using any of this contact information. I mean, all the business stuff is there, but ideally my cell or my email. Also, I'm happy to give anybody that wants one a card.